Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Okay, picture this. A place where clouds literally brush the tops of the trees, ancient rivers flow, and nestled in this misty green landscape, something really bold is happening.
We're talking about Meghalaya, right, in India's northeast.
Exactly, up in those vibrant hills. And on June 19th, 2025, something shifted. A kind of quiet revolution kicked off.
And it's not about, a new crop variety or some tech gadget.
No, nothing like that. It's much more profound. They started paying farmers, but not for rice or spices.
But for trapping carbon dioxide, the very gas warming the planet. That's the core of it.
Yes, it's a huge deal. A real milestone for India, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's more than just a milestone. It feels like a redefinition of how we approach climate action.
Absolutely.
Because it cleverly ties environmental necessity directly to economic benefits for rural communities, real tangible money in their pockets.
And that's what makes this so interesting for our deep dive today. We want to get past the headlines,
Right. Unpack how it actually works. Does it really offer a blueprint for India, maybe even globally?
Exactly. We're digging into the mechanic, the surprising facts, the human side of it too, and the challenges, of course. It can't all be smooth sailing.
No, never is. But the big idea itself is quite ingenious.
Okay, lay it out for us, the core concept.
Well, think about farmers. Their main job, traditionally, is growing food. But here, they're becoming active caretakers of the atmosphere.
So they get paid for things that actually pull greenhouse gases out of the air or stop them going up in the first place.
Precisely. It's like a localized carbon bank. You plant trees, you improve your soil health, and that effort earns you a real financial return.
Now, people listening probably know about carbon markets, the global ones. They can be pretty complex, sometimes controversial. What makes Meghalaya's approach different? You mentioned it's state-led.
That's the key differentiator. It's a state-led, localized system. This isn't some huge, potentially opaque international thing where benefits might, get lost somewhere.
Okay, so it's designed for direct impact within Meghalaya itself.
Exactly. Their efforts planting trees, agroforestry, using organic methods, conserving soil, they're carefully measured, then verified, rigorously.
Verified how?
We'll get into the specifics, but it involves tech and on-the-ground checks. The verified carbon savings become tradable credits.
And who buys these credits?
Companies, maybe other government entities who need to offset their own emissions. And crucially, the money flows back specifically to the farmers doing the work.
So it's not just about planting trees, it's broader.
Much broader. Agroforestry, mixing trees and crops, organic farming, soil conservation, it's a whole package. Building a local green economy, really.
Okay, that sounds like a clear win-win. Farmers get extra income, which is vital. The planet gets less CO2. And Meghalaya positions itself as a leader.
Pretty much, yeah.
But why Meghalaya? What makes that state such a good fit for this kind of experiment?
Well, it's almost like the place was made for it. You've got these incredible forests covering something like 70% of the state.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah, huge carbon sponges already, just naturally doing their thing.
So the landscape itself is a massive asset.
Definitely. But it's also the culture. You have tribal communities there with this deep, long-standing tradition of living in harmony with nature.
Right, I've read about their community forests.
Exactly. Many communities already manage their own forests. They've been, you could say, eco-warriors for generations without the label. Now, these traditional practices are being formally recognized and, importantly, rewarded financially.
So it's building on what's already there, rather than imposing something totally new.
That's a big part of its strength, I think. It resonates with existing practices and values.
And you have to give credit to the leadership too, right? Connecting that natural wealth and cultural practice to an economic opportunity.
Absolutely. Chief Minister Conrad Sangma's government saw the potential here, linking environment and economy. It puts them right at the forefront of India's climate efforts.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics then. From soil to cash, as you put it. How does a farmer actually do carbon farming? What does it look like day to day?
It varies, but common practices include things like planting fruit trees alongside their regular crops. Or maybe shifting from chemical fertilizers to compost or biofertilizers.
Which helps the soil store more carbon, right?
Exactly. Or it could be about preserving patches of forest on their land instead of clearing everything for cultivation. Each action traps CO2, either in the plants themselves or in the soil underground. Little carbon sinks.
And this is where the clever part comes in, measuring it all.
Yes, this is crucial for credibility. You can't just guess. Experts use tools. things like satellite imagery, sometimes even drones with special sensors, combined with actual soil sampling and testing on the ground.
So pretty high tech.
Increasingly so. It allows them to quantify quite accurately how many tons of carbon dioxide equivalent have been sequestered or avoided by those specific farming practices.
And each ton becomes a credit.
1 metric ton of CO2 equivalent removed or avoided equals 1 carbon credit, a verifiable unit.
Okay, so the farmer generates these credits through their work. Then what?
Then, companies, maybe anywhere in India or even internationally, who need to offset their emissions can purchase these credits.
And the money finds its way back.
Through the Meghalaya Basin Development Authority, the MBDA. They manage the program and ensure the payments go directly to the participating farmers. It's designed as a closed loop.
And we know this is actually happening. People are getting paid.
Yes, that date, June 19th, 2025, that was the day the first payments went out. Over 1,000 farmers.
1,000 farmers, wow. And how much are we talking?
The payments varied based on the scale of their carbon farming efforts, anywhere from around 5,000 rupees up to 50,000 rupees annually.
Okay, put that in context. What does 5,000 or 50,000 rupees mean for a farmer there?
Well, 5,000 rupees might buy a few essential sacks of rice, but 50,000, that could be a new bicycle, crucial for transport, or maybe even a smartphone. Imagine the selfies with their carbon capturing trees.
Huh? Yeah, I can picture that. It's significant money then. And are there plans to grow this?
Oh, yes. The state's goal is ambitious. They're aiming to reach 10,000 farmers by 2027 and potentially generate millions in revenue from selling these credits, boosting the whole local economy.
It sounds incredibly promising,
Uh-huh.
almost transformative. But, there's always a but. We need to fact-check the hype a bit. Is this really the game changer, it seems?
That's the right question to ask. Scientifically, the potential is definitely there. Major bodies like the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, support the idea that better land management, including agroforestry and soil carbon building, can store significant carbon.
Any specific numbers?
Well, there was a big study in Nature back in 2023. It estimated that globally, agricultural lands could potentially sequester, get this, up to 4 gigatons of CO2 every year if managed the right way.
4 gigatons. It sounds massive. How massive?
To put it in perspective, that's roughly like taking 1 billion cars off the road for a year.
1 billion cars.
Right.
Okay, that's staggering. So the science supports the potential.
It does, but potential isn't the same as reality on the ground. The implementation is everything.
Which brings us back to verification. You mentioned it earlier. How robust is it? Because carbon markets have faced criticism, haven't they?
Right.
Accusations of greenwashing.
They absolutely have, and that's why Meghalaya's approach here is so important. They're working very closely with established international standards, like the Verified Carbon Standard, or VCS.
What does that mean practically?
It means the methods for measuring, reporting, and verifying the carbon savings meet internationally recognized benchmarks for rigor and transparency. It's about ensuring each credit represents a real, additional, permanent reduction that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
So trying to avoid those pitfalls of the past, making sure the credits are legit.
Exactly. Building trust and credibility is paramount if this market is going to work long term. They seem very focused on that.
Still, even with robust verification, it's important to be realistic, right? Carbon farming isn't a magic wand.
Not at all. It's a piece of the puzzle. A potentially significant piece, but it absolutely does not replace the urgent need to cut emissions from burning fossil fuels, from industry, from transport. That remains priority number one globally.
And what about things like leakage? Does protecting a forest here mean loggers just move next door?
That's a genuine risk in many conservation projects. Meghalaya's strategy tries to mitigate this through its community-driven approach.
How does that help?
By involving entire communities, fostering collective ownership and benefit sharing, the idea is to reduce the incentive for unsustainable practices to just shift elsewhere. It's about making conservation the more attractive option for everyone locally, but it needs constant monitoring.
Makes sense. So this isn't just a standalone Meghalaya project. It fits into India's larger climate goals.
Oh, definitely. India has some serious commitments under the Paris Agreement. They're aiming for a 45% cut in emissions intensity by 2030 compared to 2005 levels.
That sounds ambitious.
It is. And they've also pledged net zero emissions by 2070. So initiatives like Meghalaya's carbon farming are crucial components for actually achieving those national targets.
I heard India is planning its own national carbon market.
Yes, the Indian Carbon Market, or ICM. It's expected to launch around 2025-26. It'll create a nationwide platform for trading carbon credits.
So Meghalaya's program is kind of like a pilot. testing the waters.
You could definitely see it that way. A crucial, real-world test case. Its successes and challenges will provide valuable lessons for the national rollout.
And the potential impact. Unlocking climate finance, especially for rural areas, that seems huge.
It really is. Farmers are on the front lines of climate change impacts. We see reports talking about huge percentages facing droughts, floods. Their livelihoods are incredibly vulnerable.
I saw a recent report, something like 41% hit by drought, 33% by floods.
Figures like that, yeah. So programs like this aren't just about cutting carbon. They're about building resilience, providing alternative income streams, adapting to the changes already happening. It tackles climate and development.
It could be a template for other Indian states too, couldn't it? Places with lots of forest, lots of agriculture.
Absolutely. States in the Himalayas, the Western Ghats, Kerala, Arunachal Pradesh. The potential for replication, adapted to local contexts, of course, is significant.
Let's bring it back to the people doing the work.
Yeah.
The farmers. Their stories really bring this to life.
They're the heart of it, aren't they?
Tell us about Lyngdoh. You mentioned him earlier, from the East Kazi Hills.
Right. Syntiew plants native fruit trees like Sophie mixed in with his rice paddies. He talked about how the carbon payments, around 20,000 a year for him.
20,000 rupees?
Yeah. How it provides a safety net. Less worry about unpredictable harvests or market prices. It means he can afford to send his kids to school regularly, maybe without taking out high-interest loans. That's life-changing.
A safety net. That's a powerful thing. And Phida Mawa, a single mother.
Yes, in the Riboy district. Her story is about empowerment. She took degraded family land and worked hard to revive it, planting bamboo using organic manure.
A restoration project, basically.
Exactly. And the extra income she gets from the carbon credits. It lets her buy better quality seeds for her main crops, maybe put some money aside for emergencies. It gives her more control, more security.
And it highlights the role of women, who are often central to these kind of local conservation efforts.
Very much so. These aren't just anecdotes, you know? These farmers, they're not just growing crops anymore. They feel like they're cultivating hope.
That's a lovely way to put it. In a world often full of gloomy climate news, seeing these tangible, positive stories is, well, it's refreshing.
It really is. It shows that solutions can work on a human scale.
But we do need to talk about the hurdles. It can't be simple. What are the big challenges facing this program as it tries to scale up?
Well, first, there's the cost. Training thousands more farmers takes resources. And the measurement and verification process, while crucial, isn't cheap. It requires expertise, technology.
Where does that money come from initially?
State investment, potentially development aid, but ultimately the system relies on selling those carbon credits. And that brings in market risk.
Meaning the price of carbon credits can go up and down.
Exactly. Global carbon prices can be volatile, influenced by international policy, economic conditions. It's a bit like, betting your farm's extra income on a market you don't control.
That's a definite risk factor. What else?
There's the knowledge gap. Carbon farming methods might be new to many farmers. Getting effective training out, especially to remote villages, that's a logistical challenge.
How are they tackling that? Just workshops?
Workshops are part of it, but they likely need more peer-to-peer learning, demonstration farms, maybe leveraging local leaders or even mobile tech where possible. Reaching that last mile is tough when roads are poor and connectivity is patchy.
And then there's the equity question. How do you ensure the benefits reach the smallholders, the most vulnerable, and aren't just captured by, say, larger landowners or intermediaries?
That's a critical concern avoiding elite capture. The community-focused design is meant to help, emphasizing broad participation. But it requires constant vigilance, transparent processes, and grievance mechanisms so small farmers have a voice.
Because globally, carbon markets have sometimes been criticized as, well, a bit of a minefield, haven't they? Loopholes, scams.
There have certainly been issues. Ensuring integrity is vital. This links back to India's broader stance, demanding significant climate finance, that $1 trillion figure often mentioned from developed nations.
Why is that finance so important?
Because developing countries argue they need support to transition to greener pathways and adapt to climate impacts they didn't primarily cause, and it helps ensure that carbon markets aren't just seen as letting rich polluters off the hook cheaply. It's about fairness and effectiveness. Preventing greenwashing and double-counting credits is absolutely essential for the whole system's credibility.
Okay, let's bring this home. Why should someone listening, maybe in a city far away, care deeply about what's happening with farmers in Meghalaya?
Because it's all connected. Profoundly. The carbon that Syntiew and Phida are trapping in their soil and trees, that helps stabilize the climate you depend on.
Right. It's not just a local issue.
Not at all. The sustainable food they might be growing contributes to broader food systems. And maybe most importantly, the model they're pioneering. It could genuinely influence how your country, how the world tackles climate change. It could shape policy and investment everywhere.
Yeah, I see that. In a time of, frankly, scary climate news heat waves, floods, seeing a practical working solution is powerful.
It demonstrates that action is possible, and it doesn't have to be just about sacrifice and gloom. It can be about innovation, empowerment, even economic opportunity.
So when you hear carbon credits, don't just tune out. Think about these farmers turning their fields into, well, a battleground against climate change and actually making progress.
It's grassroots action with potentially global significance.
So the final thought then, as Meghalaya shows this path, what can you, the listener, actually do?
Well, on a consumer level, you can try to support local sustainable farmers wherever you are, ask questions about where your food comes from.
And maybe demand more from companies.
Absolutely. Push companies to take real climate action, to offset emissions they can't yet eliminate, using high-quality, verified credits like the ones Meghalaya aims to produce, not just cheap, questionable ones.
And the simplest action.
Maybe just plant a tree. It sounds small, but every bit helps build momentum and connection to the issue.
It's a story that's both practical and, dare I say, quite noble. Local innovation with the power to inspire global change.
Well said.
So let's raise a virtual cup of tea, maybe some sustainably grown Assam tea, to the farmers of Meghalaya, the unsung heroes, really, of this emerging green revolution in India.
Hear, hear. Let's hope their story takes root and spreads far beyond those misty hills.
What an incredible deep dive. Thanks for unpacking that with us.
My pleasure. Fascinating topic.